Hello, everyone. This is Fabian, the product manager for GitLab Geo, and this is the GitLab Geo kickoff video for GitLab 13.2, the next upcoming release. I'll walk you through the Geo Roadmap, a thematic overview, and the iterations that we're going to ship and address in 13.2. So let me quickly share my screen. So the first thing is, if you're interested in the product direction for Geo on a high level, please have a look at the direction page. We keep them updated. So for all of the categories that are part of the Geo group, Geo Replication, DR, and Backup and Restore. But before I go into the specifics of 13.2, I also wanted to take a moment and talk about the wider roadmap. And so 13.2 is this chunk here, but there's a lot more that we are thinking about. And so I wanted to sort of step back and say, like, okay, what are the most important things that Geo, the Geo team, is trying to address right now? And the focus of the group at this moment is really to improve the disaster recovery and failover process of GitLab using Geo. And so most of the ongoing work that you'll hear me talk about is in this specific epic here to reach viable maturity for Geo. And so there are a few things to unfold here. There are essentially two main initiatives that you've heard me talk about a number of times in the past. So the first one is really to add replication capabilities to Geo for the data that is not currently replicated by Geo. This is really important because if we don't replicate data from a primary to a secondary, you can't easily recover it. You need to go to a backup. So for disaster recovery, replicating everything is really important. There's a major initiative to essentially standardize a framework that is scalable and allows other teams within GitLab or the wider GitLab community to add data to GitLab Geo. So this is one of the main two things that we're doing right now. The other one is really to improve planned failovers, to make it easier to fail over to a secondary, to promote the secondary to a primary, and to add some missing functionalities that make that process easier. And then lastly, even though that also affects Geo replication as a whole, we've done quite a bit of work by now to simplify some of the backfill operations for Geo, to improve the scalability of our Geo replication backend, which is really important for our DR and replication features, because if we're not replicating data fast, there will be more lag. Making sure that Geo is scalable, performant, even for very large installations is really important. And so we've done some work in that area. So these are the high-level themes here that are happening, and a lot of the activities that you'll see me discuss in more detail fit into those. There's obviously a lot more that we'll aim to accomplish in the future. For example, complete maturity for DR and complete maturity for Geo replication. But this is later this year, and we'll talk about it in the kickoff videos when we come into the sort of 13.4, 13.3.5 time range. So for this chunk here, 13.2, the next video, the next release, not the next video, what are we actually going to do? And so the first thing is we've worked on the self-service framework. So the ability for us to actually replicate data very quickly, and we focused on the replication of files or blobs. And so we hope to finish the package file replication, which is the first implementation of this replication strategy. So if there's another file type that looks similar to package files, it should be a lot easier to actually ship it. Rather than taking maybe 3 months or even longer, it should be really quick. And so this is one of the main first things that will actually happen in 13.2, which is Geo will add capabilities to support 3 more data types: Terraform state, vulnerability exports, and external merge requests. All of those are files or blobs, and they will benefit from our framework, making it much easier to implement those. And we hope that we can really iterate a lot faster now that sort of the framework itself is becoming more stable. So that's number one. I've opened these issues here. So actually I didn't, but that's fine. These are the three main things here. Then there are a few bits that we need to wrap up for our scalability improvements for 13.2. This will actually result in us removing a part of Geo by 13.2. That's called a foreign data wrapper for Postgres, which will make Geo a lot easier to maintain and upgrade, and also, the performance will be impacted. So quite excited to bring those scalability improvements to a close. In 13.2, and you can see this here as well, we'll work on specific parts of the front-end capability. So what will be shown to systems administrators trying to understand the state of the replication. And this here is really about some technical debt and making sure that the framework itself also works well with the front-end code. So that will probably take a little bit longer. There are a few smaller items in here that will be shipped in 13.2. Another bit that is sort of happening a little bit more in the background in small iterations is to add verification for package files. So this will take a little while longer, but we are addressing specific issues here in 13.2 as well to ensure that verification becomes a sort of included out-of-the-box part of the self-service framework. And this is important because we replicate data right now, especially files, but we don't automatically verify that all of the data that was transferred was actually not corrupted. And so there are some situations in which that is, obviously a problem if you're trying to access data and maybe a hard disk failed or the file system had a problem. And so we are aiming to ship verification as a part of the framework, which should then also mean that, for example, these items here, which are first going to focus on replication, then later on will come with verification out of the box with very little effort. So these are the parts in 13.2 that have to do mainly with the self-service framework and some of the scalability work. And there's a second part to this, which is focusing on the improvements for planned failovers. And so in 13.1, we hope to finish a feature that makes it easy to pause and resume replication. So hopefully this will close relatively soon and ship in time, which makes it easier to essentially decouple the primary and the secondary. And we'll also have a little bit of discovery left to do on the failover process itself. But then, and you heard me talk about that in detail before, we are or have been working for a little while on creating a maintenance mode and actually put it off a little bit more in favor of delivering some smaller iterations in the self-service framework. But we've broken this down a little bit more. I can actually, I believe, show you this. So there are quite a few very granular items here for the maintenance mode that we aim to ship in 13.1. And then there's a few more items in 13.2, but we anticipate that there is a little bit more testing involved to actually ship the entire functionality. So that's another focus for this release. Another item that sort of spun out of interviews that we had with our systems administrators is that the overall documentation sometimes is a little bit difficult to follow. And so we'll start on simplifying the documentation, maybe adopting more of a runbook style for documentation. And so for 13.1, for 13.2 that is, sorry, we are going to actually rewrite some of the documentation in more of a runbook style. So that's probably going to take us into the release afterwards as well. And then finally, there are a couple of items that I also wanted to discuss that are important, which is we are also continuing to improve the user experience for our systems administrators. And what this means in 13.2 concretely is we're going to work on, I need to actually find it. Let me have a look, sorry, on quite a few small items. One that is actually important is forms. So here, the forms that are on the front end for editing the nodes, and we'll make sure that those really are a little bit easier to manage for systems administrators. And the last thing, which is going to be a pattern for the next releases, is we really need to improve the promotion process itself, especially for larger installations. So we are working towards sort of a single command that can be run to promote an entire multi-server installation of GitLab. And in 13.2, we'll start with the POC. So this is essentially a proof of concept to understand how we could actually sort of alter the configuration of nodes automatically, so that if you have a secondary site that you want to promote to a primary, systems administrators can actually run a single command. But there's a little bit of technical complexity involved, and we'll start very small to understand the technical implications and then ship iterative improvements along the way. So that's another item that is coming. So this is the roadmap view. There's also a planning issue where you can look at the individual pieces that are important. And another thing that I didn't mention yet, that is something that will need to happen, is GitLab now ships with Patroni, which is a template for sort of fault-tolerant Postgres. And we're also going to do a little bit of work to verify that Geo works well with Patroni and the latest version of Postgres. So that's it. As you can see, there's quite a few moving parts now that you have a visualization of all of the epics, but we're trying to make these improvements iteratively, and I'll keep you posted as to the progress. So thanks very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you again next month. Bye.